Good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday.
And welcome to this week's edition of Hook, Line, and Striker.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily, and that was a lot smoother than last week.
Yeah.
If you were here, we had, a funny little glitch, and so that was super smooth. And, I'm confident the rest of the episode will go just the same.
Hopefully.
With that, our fishing has gone kind of haywire as well. So I don't know if it was a reflection of that show or whatever, but, we went out last weekend only for Saturday because
we had all kinds of lightning and thunder on Sunday.
Yeah, and even Saturday afternoon, we got chased in. We're okay with a little bit of rain. We did actually have our rain gear on, and it was awesome. But then, the lightning settles in, and that kind of changes the situation. So, like you said, Saturday or Sunday, we couldn't even go out, and that was terrible.
Well, and I mean, Saturday was pretty wet. We went out, and people were commenting on our cute dog, and then as we were pulling our boat, people were like, "Where'd you pick up that wet rat?"
Yeah.
She got kind of soaked, so she was happy to get back in the truck and dry off, and so were we. But we weren't really that wet because we had our rain suits on. Man, that was awesome.
We do need a rain suit for our dog, though.
Striker, get on dog rain suits.
Oh my gosh. So we have a few people here checking in. We went out in the downpours and it was crazy fun. Nick, I am super glad to hear about that. The other part of this story that I have not disclosed yet is our fishing was terrible.
Yeah.
Honestly,
garbage.
we looked high, we looked low, we looked here, we looked there, brush piles, shallow and deep and islands and everywhere with the aqua view and not. And you know what? I don't know. We talked to Brian Brosdahl one time, and he said that the walleyes jumped to the trees. I don't really think that happened, but I swear this. I don't know where those fish went on that lake this past weekend.
Well, I mean, we did find some, and once I came back and replayed some of the Aquaview footage. Sometimes it's when you're out on the boat and you're trying to get on fish and work kind of fast, you miss some stuff. So I like to go back and review the footage on the computer, and there was crappies sitting there. They were sitting just right in the weeds. It was probably halfway down that point we were fishing, and we were marking a lot of fish.
Oh yeah, a ton of fish.
But
catching just all small little fish.
The only ones that were biting were tiny. So, we talked to some of the locals that were out, and they said, "Oh, we caught a bunch of northerns, and the one guy caught a 14-inch crappie, and this and that." And that was the evening before. Mm-hmm. So we were there. Probably about 12 hours later and everything shut off. So that's how it goes.
Yeah. And Nick, great point. Bad day on the water is better than a good day at work. Yeah, unless you're a guide and your work is your water. Which I'm not. That's not me. So that's lucky. Oh my goodness. So anyways, let's, we could sit here and chat all night. So let's do that. But let's bring in, our guest of honor. So Jamie Fritz, thank you for being on the show and welcome.
Man. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining me or inviting me.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. So the hardest question of the night is always the first one. For somebody who doesn't know you, can you tell us about yourself?
Well, I guess can be like the athletes. The game chose me. I came into a long lineage of hunting and fishing. Goes all the way back, at least as far as I can track, to my great grandfather. And when I was younger, we didn't have all the Xboxes and everything. Like they say, more tackle boxes, less Xboxes. And, we always had to go out fishing with Dad. And once I got old enough, my dad stopped taking my sister and I had to go and ice fishing. He had me ice fishing I was 5 years old. And, we'd go out to the little lakes and, of course he'd hold on to me enough to turn me, black and blue because he's holding on so tight, but basically grew up hunting and fishing, and it's like we kind of were talking before with work. I work in the automotive industry, and my getaway is to go fishing, and everyone's like, well, why don't you do tournaments, or as I call them, derbies? And I'm like, I can't kill what I love. I don't need another job. So that's been my passion forever. I just really love fishing it, and obviously love eating it.
And yeah, that's for sure. Oh my goodness. So, I mean, do you have a favorite fish, or what is your species you like to target?
Well, in the spring and summer months, I really like my walleye. Ice fishing, I love my perch, but I also like to go after walleye. We got an opportunity this year, first time since 2014-15, in the winter to go actually fish Lake Erie. And not many people get to be able to ice fish Lake Erie. You can obviously sometimes Lake Michigan. Lake St. Clair isn't a great lake, but I love fishing both sides. A lot of times we'll go over to Canada as well to ice fish there. They have more natural shoreline, so you get all the zooplankton and that's what feeds the bait fish. Everyone forgets, instead of having all these nice houses on the lakes that have these steel seawalls, they don't hold much zooplankton for the bait fish.
And I imagine that you know something about fish based on the one that's on the wall behind you.
Yeah, this one actually is kind of a funny story. We were in a tournament on Lake Michigan out of Frankfort, Michigan, just underneath Traverse City. Most people know Traverse City. And my dad's like, "You're going fishing with us tomorrow. We're all going out in this tournament." And it's really a derby because everyone could pay to get in it. So I'm like, "No, Dad, I want to sleep in." Well, I didn't have a choice. I went out with him. I was picked first when we're out for the tournament to reel in fish. So we had set all the lines. And I was 11 years old at the time when I caught this. So this 32-pound king salmon, which won the derby, he ended up hitting a white with black ladderback J-plug. And actually, there's just underneath me here is I was on Michigan Outdoors and everything, and there's an article about it because I was Trophy Book of the Week. But he ended up hitting it, and oh my God, it was about a 45-minute fight, 44 inches, 32 pounds, not near what the kid just caught. I don't know if you guys seen it out of Ludington, almost 48 pounds. But that one was 47 inches from what I heard. So, I mean, this one lengthwise was there. It's hard to believe he had me by 15 girth-wise, but
yeah, that's crazy.
That is crazy because that's so I told my dad, I don't want to fish. And like I said, it's all history now, and definitely glad I went out. And, it's all been, that could have been one of the fish that gave me the bug to keep on going.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and what a story on a day that you didn't want to go out. Now, anytime that you consider not going out, you're like, no, today is the day I'm going to catch a good fish.
I think it is subliminally in the back of my head now.
Yeah. That's so funny. So then fast forward to today, could you generally tell us your location and how fishing is going for you?
It's been really good this year. It's weird, the COVID year for last year. I don't know if you guys heard our fantastic governor, and I say that facetiously. She wouldn't let us take our boats out. And then finally, we were able to take our boats out, but we couldn't be with people and so on. But so it's been kind of weird. We can't fish the Canadian side right now. Actually, they just opened it up yesterday. So we can actually fish the Canadian side because the St. Clair River, obviously U.S. or Michigan on one side and then Canada on the other. And just like any other fisherman, you want to take all the gear, you want to have all the access to anything you want, and that includes the water. So, we've had to pack a lot of people on just the U.S. side, but the fishing's been good. We start out jigging in March, April, and we will use obviously plastics. We tend to use 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce jig heads with plastics and tip with minnow until it gets about 45 degrees water temp, because that scent obviously helps attract the fish. And then what we'll do is, like you shared, the whipping. The whipping is ideal when the water temp gets about 42, 44 degrees as well. And then they start to congregate. They push towards Lake Huron, from Lake Huron and from Lake St. Clair into the St. Clair River, and they start working their way all the way to the middle of the river. So we do this style of fishing at night. You can obviously jig at night, but fishing's been good. We've been getting a mix of, early on, we'll get a mix of walleye and salmon. I've got Atlantic salmon. We've got cohos. Trying to think of some of the other, no king so far. A lot of times the kings just, it's more like hitting the lotto sometimes, getting a king out of there. But, we get a good amount of coho until that water temp gets too high and the coho exit.
Sure.
Cool.
Man, that's like a whole lot. I mean, it's like so cool to have so many different opportunities to fish so many different types of fish. And, I guess that is, I'm going to kind of jump ahead. You talked about your tactic here. Did you call it whipping? And then you have, I guess, a diagram here and it says piggybacking. Are those the same things or two different things?
Well, yeah, it's so whipping is the same thing. Piggybacking is a style. I would say 80+% of the whippers will all piggyback the baits. So you would take, like I said, I did grab some lures. You would take the back of this pencil plug and you would piggyback, you would clip in your next leader. And that's why we called it piggybacking. And then you would go to your
diagram really quick while you talk about it. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, you have your three-way, like I have in the diagram. You have your main line, you have your three-way, then you come down to your sinker. What's very important with this method, and they do this in some of the other regions, but you need a decent current. But with your sinker line there, you need to keep that about 8 pounds, and you want it to be, kind of a mono, because if you go too heavy, if you ever were to get in a snag, you want to be able to break off that and just lose a sinker, because a lot of these baits, especially when they're custom, you can average probably $7 to $10 a bait. And as you guys can see, with 3 baits there, you can roughly have at least $30 on there at one time. And then what we use is we'll use a Mason hybrid line that has no memory for our leaders, and we put all our leaders on a little leader spool like this, and we just, again, we clip one to another and leave them open. It's really handy. And then you put your first bait to your pencil plug. Again, your pencil plugs have no action, like we kind of had mentioned, and they just get action from when you whip them. They'll actually move like this. And then you have another body or another pencil plug, and then you'll have a body bait. And when we say body bait, it has to be a floater, like a F11 Rapala, Bomber Long 15A, Challenger makes baits. But essentially the key is to have them that are floaters, because this is almost essentially like having a downrigger, because your sinker line is keeping the bait down. If the back bait, the body bait, can dive, 6 feet, for example, you will be stirring up some mud, let's say.
Yeah, well, and that was actually going to be one of my questions is, do you want that sinker then to, just kind of bounce off the bottom or not even really touch it?
Yep, you'll bounce it. You would actually, you whip it forward, you come back, you hit the bait, you hit the bottom. Sometimes you want that sinker slide, and those walleye will come smack it as that bait slides back, just like a bait fish scurrying through the river, and it kind of floats back a little bit. They kind of like that. The cadence can depend on the night, but basically you would bounce it, and you'll sit there and whip it. Again, it all depends, but sometimes 4 to 6 times, roughly, let's say 30 seconds to a minute. Then you'll let out line, and you'll go back, 5 to 10 feet. You work that section, don't get anything, let out more line. And then typically we'll go out. I mean, for me, I'm 170 to 200 feet, and you need to have a line counter on here, because you can pinpoint where the fish are sitting in a hole, or, where they're congregated as well. And sometimes because we anchor in the river, we'll actually drop back. If I'm getting a lot of my fish 200 feet back, I'll let out another 50 foot of anchor line, and I'll bring myself right on top of them more. But, you'll actually whip it, and then your back body bait does all your action. And I always call it it does all the dancing. It brings all the boys to the yard.
I think in the walleye run, you want the females though, right?
Yeah.
So how do you go about choosing colors? Do you go all the same on your baits? Do you like to mix it up?
No, I like to mix it up, and for many years I had basically a college folder that was a hard book, and I would write down everything from moon, when the moon came up, sometimes if the moon was going down at that point. Is it a quarter moon? Was it no moon? Personally, I don't like to fish no moon, and everyone, goes back and forth with me on this. I just, no moon is, the fish are just act really different to me. Usually if we ever get our limit on those nights, usually I stay away from it. We get them early and they're done. But we'll look at the water temp, clouds. So we pick our lures, bright baits, bright night, and everyone will sit there and say, okay, well, this bait's green, it's bright. No, it's really not. So this fire tiger here would be a bait that I would use on a dark night. And if I had a bright day, this one we call screw you, and it's kind of fun. That's what we call this one. But in a nice moon night, we like to have pearls or chromes. And everyone, really, it's pretty simple. I mean, those bait fish, if it's no moon night or heavy clouds, they're not going to be like a neon sign telling you to come get dinner. Not like our McDonald's anyway. So, so that's basically how we pick our colors. But I will mix it up if we have a dark night or a bright night. I might mix up some bright night. I might mix up some pearls and a chrome. Dark night, I might mix up, some blues, some oranges, and really the fish tell you the story. And people look at me like I'm crazy, but sometimes they're just hitting, again, these pencil plugs. Early in the year, a lot of times you see this because the fish are a little lethargic and they don't want that fast moving bait. They see a body bait go wiggling by. They say, yeah, I'm too cold for you. And that's what you have to key on. And sometimes it's either color, like I said, between the two baits, causing them to hit either one or the other, or a lot of times it can be, again, it's early in the spring, the water temp's 44 degrees, and they're really not going after that body bait right yet.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. This is all so new for me. Because to be honest, I've never fished this way. So, I guess I'm thinking of even my own questions. If there are people at home that are checking this out, let us know if you guys have questions about this, or as well. Question: are you part fish?
Yeah, some people will say that.
yeah. To figure out a fishing method like that, you might be. So what kind of rod do you use with that?
So we have, I don't think I can get it in here. We use a 4 foot tall, very stout rod. Again, with I use the Daiwa AccuDepths, Daiwa Sea Lines, because they can take that opening and shutting, because you're constantly letting out line and everything like that. So that's one of my reels. We use 20-pound Power Pro, and then we tie that to the 3-way. And then, like I mentioned, we use Mason line for our leaders. Some people use clips on their leaders. Some use snap swivels. It's all personal preference. Some people I've seen even tie it on. And when you can switch in a night, personally, I don't suggest tying it on, but again, to each their own. And so we used to use, like I was mentioning, in the early 60s, 70s, when this was really becoming a way of fishing for walleye, they used to take old muskie rods and they cut them down because, again, they have to be stout, because you have to be able to whip that rod and get action back to the bait. And think, if I have a 7-foot rod, the longer the moment, the less the motion back to my lures. So that's why they look like that. And then they started to create their own, and their specialty market here is probably the only place that sells them. But a lot of guys personally make them as well. So, but that's basically what we use. I can try and show you guys, but basically there's a rod.
Nice.
So you can see the line counter on there and everything. But it's only 4 foot tall. I mean, I can barely get it in the
Yeah.
So, but that's what we use. We use obviously a headlamp at night because it's really good to, again, key on where the fish are sitting. So it's really good to say, okay, I'm constantly hitting fish at 100 feet or whatever, and you can kind of key on that, and no different than what a lot of the guys do trolling. You know, I'm running this depth with this bait. Okay, we'll run everything off the boards the same, for example.
And then did you say this was just early spring or all?
No. Water? So we do it all year. So usually we start into April roughly, and we'll run. I've run into when the Christmas trees are on the river. So I've run late into December. All depends on how that water temp, again, when that water temp gets below 44, 42, they start to really slow down. But we've had many 30, 40, 50 fish nights in December. And everyone's like, you're crazy. Well, we put on our climate suits, our striker climate suits. I got my stealth gloves because I still got good mobility to my hands. So that's what we do. August or September is usually the slower month. Usually if August is bad, September is better, or vice versa. But August or September are lower months. But you got a lot of people that are afraid to work for the fish. They love it in the spring when it's like shooting fish in a barrel. But, you know, personally for me, I take it as a challenge, and I like to go out there and, you know, rifle through my 6 boxes to figure out which bait they want tonight and put it all together. I guess to me, I feel more accomplished that way.
Yeah, you're making an interesting point also is, you know, there are fishermen also, you know, you're talking about doing this at night. There are some people who go out, you know, 7, 8, 9, okay, 10 p.m., maybe even into 11, you know, but, you know, sometimes it's amazing how active fish get, you know, after some of those hours when everybody is going home. And there has honestly been a night or two when we went out night fishing, and right when everybody left is all magically like right when fish started biting. And so, you know, how late do you stay out?
Let's say sometimes I've seen the sun come up.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have now, the older I get, the harder that is. But a lot of times we'd stay out till we come off the water 1, 2 in the morning, and then, you know, we clean our fish at the cleaning station, and then, you know, load up the boat and head back home. So a lot of times, you know, we're not getting home till 3 or so in the morning at times, but the bite's been really good. We've have a very impressive fishery right now. I mean, as you guys, I mean, Lake Erie, of course, so we're tied to that. And I mean, we got, you know, millions and millions. We'll probably have in the St. Clair River, most people say, well, when the walleye spawn, they leave. No, you have, you know, we have at least 1 million resident fish in the river at the time. So we're lucky to, you know, live in the Great Lakes, or like you guys, be on the Great Lakes as well and be able to access it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I don't get out on the Great Lakes enough. We do live close. Let's go fishing.
But as far as like when we look at the diagram, so when we get a fish on, like I mentioned, you know, when you and I were talking, is we sometimes, you can have 3 fish on at one time. Many times do we have, you know, 2 fish on. Sometimes we'll have one on the first pencil plug and on the back body bait. So one thing people need to keep in mind is when that 3-way ends at the end of your rod, you have to hand line that in. So we put the rod down and we start to hand line in, and, you know, we flip the fish in usually. So if we had one on the first one, we'd flip that one in. Then we'd go to the second bait. We'd hang that in the boat, and then we'd walk back to our, you know, 10 to 12 footer at the back, and we'd bring that one in as well. Usually I flip them in the boat because I don't like messing with the nets at night. But
well,
but
you
that
got a lot
is
of treble hooks there too.
Yeah, I've had a couple hospital visits. One time a buddy had to cut one out of my hand. He had his boat at home and actually had to come out, and I had one caught in my knuckle.
Oh,
And
no.
I unclipped it. I put on another bait, didn't think too much, went back, caught another fish, and said, okay, it's in my right hand. I reel right-handed. So I'm sitting there reeling as this bait's going cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo.
Oh my gosh.
And another time I had one, the body baits get in my thumb big time. And my buddy took me in. There's a hospital a couple miles away from the launch. The doctor gave me the numbing shot, and he goes, I just got to ask you, how many fish you got? I go, 4. He goes, you going out to get your limit? I said, you betcha.
Yeah.
And we did that night. We went out, you know, my thumb was a little numb, but once he pulled that hook through and cut off the barb, I was good to go, and we went back at it.
Yeah. So I guess another thing that I was thinking about with your technique here, is there a specific, like, you know, ripping cadence, or how do you go about that?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, a lot of people, there's pretty good saying that a buddy of mine said, and it's, you got to break a couple eggs to make an omelet. So everybody wants to sit there and fit in these boxes. Well, you got to sit there and work outside it. So sometimes whipping over the head, or whipping parallel with the water, you know, standing up, doing that, but messing with your cadence as far as sometimes a faster whip, sometimes a slower whip. Like I mentioned, letting that sinker slide. Sometimes we'll get out, like I mentioned, we'll go out 200 feet, and a lot of people reel their line in and just go back out. No, we'd work it back in, and a lot of times we get fish coming back in. So you really get, you know, 2 for the price of 1, I say, because you get to go out and then you get to bring it back in, and you know, you catch a lot of fish that way. And if you ever watch the minnows in the river and you think about working that bait back to your boat, that's how they sometimes like it, because it's very natural, just like a minnow would do.
Mm-hmm.
So the cadence is a big thing. And, you know, I tell people, take a notebook, and everyone wants, you know, we live in a society that wants everything now, right? So I said, you know, fail a couple times, write it down, see what works for you, because what might work for me might not work for you, and vice versa. And that's really where, and confidence is everything. You guys know it all too well. I mean, you got confidence in a certain rod, a certain shirt you wear, you know, everything. So that's the big thing. And to me, that's the fun in it. And been lucky enough to been doing this style of fishing since the 80s. And, you know, I troll, I like it, but there's nothing better than hand-to-hand combat, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is for sure. I like what you were saying about, you know, write it down, you know, don't be afraid to fail. It does stink to go out and, you know, put in a lot of effort and maybe not catch a ton of fish, or not great fish, you know, not big ones or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But that is the thing about fishing, is to look for those patterns. And so once you do start to figure out what is working, I mean, that goes a huge way for your next trip out.
For sure. I mean, like I said, I don't like to fail, but it's taught me more than I'll ever know. And now when we go out, you know, after all these years, I mean, I've failed enough to know what I have to do to figure it out, and it helps you put the puzzle together. And I don't know, like I said, I think that's what makes it good. Nothing easy is ever worth it, right?
So. Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, and I'm going to bring up a quick point here. We talked about this a little bit before the show started, but like in Wisconsin here, because there is 3 baits on this rig in particular, that would count for all 3 of our lines here in Wisconsin on the one line. Correct. So like over in Michigan, you were saying you can have two rods set up like this?
I could have 2 rods with 3 baits. So our rule is no more than 3 rods. It is also no more than 6 baits. So technically, I could go 3 rods, meaning each of them have 2 on it, or like we had discussed, 2 rods with 3 each on it.
Yeah.
I know some regions even count the hooks. So each treble hook is a hook. And I think that's crazy to me, but.
You know, I'm trying to imagine though, like if I had one of these setups out, and you're talking about you might catch one fish, you could catch 2 fish at a time, you could catch 3, and I had 2 rods going with fish on all of them. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't think I want 3 of those out.
Oh yeah, like we mentioned, we've had steelhead one time. We reeled up all the way to the 3-way, had it in the rod holder, and those baits were just skipping along the surface, and a steelhead came and smacked the bait. And mind you, you can't set the hook, you can't reel anymore. So you're sitting there holding on to this fish, 10, 12 pound steelhead as he's doing his acrobatic and everything. We've caught muskie, sheephead, unfortunately. We've even caught perch. Pike has been rare, I think. One in as long as I can remember. It's only been a couple perch as well. I actually caught my biggest smallmouth in 2010. I caught the biggest smallmouth in the state of Michigan at 7.5 pounds doing this method. I happened to be, it was 10:30 at night, and I went smallmouth. I went walleye, another small. I threw back a 5.5 pound smallmouth. He made it look like nothing. So, but you get to catch different fish as well. We've even had catfish, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's awesome.
It's a wide variety, and on a 4-foot rod, you can imagine that can be pretty interesting.
Yeah. And then you were mentioning, when you're out in the boat, if it's December or, getting there, that you are a fan of your climate suit. Is that because you can take those layers in and out, and that makes it super easy for boat season? Yeah,
a lot of times I can get away with, the bibs are so warm, and I have my striker hoodies on. I love them all. I have, ones they don't even sell anymore. And they're just so heavy, and they got that windbreaker to them that, you throw them over your bibs, and you have a shirt under, obviously, your hoodie, and, you don't need anything more than that. Occasionally, definitely for the ride in, if you don't need the climate jacket while you're fishing, you'll need it on the ride in for sure. Like I said, always using the stealth gloves are great, because you're sitting there holding on to that line, and it keeps your hands warm, but you still have the dexterity in your hands. I have a couple pretty good videos on my page, obviously, letting some fish go. And, we had a 29-incher last year that I let go, and, I had to put them in the water, and it's great to have those gloves on because my hands don't get wet and they don't get cold. So that would be basically our setup. We have the striker socks as well. So that's some of the gear basically that we use. Sometimes I'll even use my Predator suit, depending on the day. Sometimes even, you guys touched on it, the rain gear, the adrenaline suit sometimes is just, it's such a good windbreaker that I can get away with that and still, again, have all that mobility as well.
Mm-hmm. That's a really great point, is when you have that windbreak, it's amazing that you don't need so much extra warmth. But I'm thinking especially that early and late boat season where, it's not raining out, but you want to avoid some of that like spray or, the splashing and all of that. So that is a perfect application for that rain gear.
Yeah, I love my adrenaline suit. I've had it 2 years now, and never had good rain gear before. I've tried many others, and I've had issues with all of them. Some, it got so suffocating in it. So, like I said, I love my adrenaline suit. Plus, it looks really cool.
Yeah, it does look actually really cool. I'm surprised between all of us, none of us are wearing the veil strike pattern tonight.
I guess I could find a picture quick.
No, it's okay. I so often wear the low tide hoodies just because I love them, and then they have those awesome sleeves. So I guess that's why I'm laughing. Oh my gosh.
I have to wear, I love the low tide for jigging season. It may not be warm out, but I like having the gator. So my wife always yells at me when I get too sunburned. So I kind of protect myself that way.
Oh yeah. I think it's maybe even the high tide that comes with the built-in gator.
Yeah, the high tide.
Yeah, and removable by
removable buttons as well.
Yeah, so that's really awesome.
Yeah.
I do like wearing those as base layers actually, because you know what? With those gaiters, that wind on my neck, I guess, I don't know if guys have this problem, because when I pull my hair up, you know, you guys don't tend to have long hair, so you might have this too. You know, that little wind on the back of your neck gets really chilly in ice season. And if you can wear something with that gaiter that, you know, is just blocks the wind back there, that does help a lot.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now I'm kind of, it's been so hot this year, I'm kind of wishing for ice season, but
yeah, that's what I was going to ask next is, you know, you talked about 2 different ice suits. So do you have a favorite in ice season, or you just kind of switch between depending?
If we do a lot of walking, in Michigan, we've had some kind of bipolar winters. You know, one year we only get canal ice. I really like the Predator for a mobility standpoint when you're walking, because it won't get you too hot, but it's always done in every application. So if I'm walking, I tend to wear my Predator. If I'm taking the snowmobile or quad, a lot of times my Climate, I've had a Climate since 2012. So I still have that one. It's kind of like my Whoopee, but last year I did get another Climate, the new updated version. So I have that one as well. But you know, the Climate is to me a one and done, because you can zip out the spring jacket. Sometimes I'll even wear the spring jacket into work. So, so those are probably the 2 that I mainly use all the time, the Predator and the Climate.
Well, and I love hearing that you have a Climate from like a really long time ago, because that really is a testament to the quality. Yeah. Yeah. You know, but as somebody who's out there, you know, catching fish and, you know, on the ice, you know, wearing it in the boat, you know, that's a multi-use tool at that point. And, you know, when you have a suit that's durable enough to keep up with you, that's important.
Oh yeah, it's been a great suit, and like we were talking, I have so much confidence that I haven't wore my new Climate yet, because I have my old Climate, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So,
yeah, that is so funny. Man, I am interested looking at the gear that's going to be coming up for this year too. So I can't wait to hear about that. But do you have any ice fishing plans?
The goal this year, it's funny you asked, we were talking over the weekend, the goal is to go out to Lake Cascade in Idaho. That's my bucket trip. That's where I'm going to go this year. We're going to rent snowmobiles out there. I can't do the drive from Michigan. That's way too far for me. So we're going to fly in and rent and go in. And I got a few good 14 plus inch perch on the wall here next to my salmon buddy here, and I want to top it, and I've got up to 1 pound 10 ounces, so I want to break the 2 pound barrier. So that's my goal. Hopefully get on Lake Erie again, like we were able to this year. We were out on it one day, and you know, we had decent enough ice, and we were out by West Sister. We were probably 5-6 miles out. And most people think we're crazy. But then when the offshore wind started to howl a little bit, we tucked our tails and went in. I don't like that offshore wind.
No, right. Those are some big bucket list trips. So, you know, Lake Erie, a lot of people are looking to get out of a place like that. Cascade, man, that is a place that people are. But what I was going to say about that, though, we do actually have some striker staff out there. Super awesome people. Robin and Bobby. Am I pronouncing their last name right? Schindler?
Yeah.
Schindler, they said. So check that out, Western Ice Fishing Association. So they have a lot of really great information out there, but they are really fun people. So if you're going to be in the area, you should definitely get a hold of them.
Well, and as far as just knowing when the fish are biting and stuff, like Bobby and Robin do a great job at keeping people informed on ice conditions and informed on the fishing.
Oh, that's great to know. I'll always take all the intel I can.
Yeah.
So they're right in Idaho then?
They used to be. They actually just moved to Washington, but they're not so far away that they can't make the drive. That's their lake. They
Yeah,
love
they
they
fish
love
there
that
all the
lake. They
time.
fish it a lot. So
I think I could get skunked on that lake with the, being able to fish in the mountains like that.
yeah.
I pretty much, I mean, my goal is to get the perch, but just being that kind of scenery would be pretty much be in awe.
Yeah. Us too.
You live in a pretty beautiful place too, though, Michigan. People come and fish there a lot. Actually, talk about a destination. A lot of people come visit Gogebic.
Yeah, yep. Then they got the big perch there as well. Not the quantity that you can out of Cascade, but yeah, definitely big fish. And like I mentioned, we have a cabin just by Gogebic. But I want to kind of get away and see something else. And
Mhm.
the Upper Peninsula is obviously a lot different than the lower between Michigan. You feel like you're in two different states. But I guess we did okay in that war in Toledo to get the Upper Peninsula out of the deal.
Right.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome. So with that, if there are people who are watching this, coming back and checking this out, and they have questions about your specific technique here. I'm looking at our other screen if you're watching what I'm looking at, because I'm still looking at it up there. But if people have questions, is there a way that they could get a hold of you or come chat about this?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people hit me up on Facebook usually. I have some room left on there still, so pretty much if you got a fish in the profile, I'm accepting it.
That's yeah.
So that's usually the best way. Occasionally we do seminars, but now, as I mentioned, we used to do a lot of them at Gander Mountain, and they're no longer. So we've talked about doing it at some of the places in Michigan here that share striker gear. We got striker gear into a lot of some of the local shops here as well. Having being able to get them in and get the gear and get the latest gear is really good, and then it gets even more exposure. But I mean, best suit in the business, so it really speaks for itself.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And then if people are looking to, follow along with your different adventures, is it your personal profile or you have another place that you post as well?
No, it's my personal. So far, I'm on Instagram. I'm not very fluid in it. I feel like my dad. Hey, come do this electronic stuff for me. For some reason, the Instagram, Facebook's been around forever, so that's where a majority is. I have a little following on the Instagram, but to me, I think you can go through a lot more detail and it's more personalized on Facebook, to be honest. So I kind of like that style a little better. So that would be, but my personal page is basically, my wife always yells, she's like, it's always pictures of you and fish and never me. So you probably noticed I just changed it recently. It's an anniversary month, so I better behave.
There you go.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing your pictures from Cascade later this year. So we'll check in with you after that happens.
Yep. Yeah, I got my fingers crossed. Good ice out there. This year was a year to go, and I wish I would have just pulled the trigger. And I was just with everything going on. I wanted to enjoy the whole experience, so
Right.
I was afraid that it might be tarnished a little bit. And actually had buddies go out there this year, and they did extremely, extremely well. I mean, tons of 2-pound perch, a bunch of trout as well, which we used to ice fish for trout here. They used to stock some of the local ponds, and they would actually have derbies. So when I was a kid, when I said I'd ice fish with my dad at 5, that we would actually we would go out and fish those derbies, and I still have the trophies actually. But we used to then, after the derbies were over, my dad would check me out a $6 out of school when I was older, junior high and high school, junior high basically. And we'd go and I'd go fishing with my dad or my grandpa for more trout until they were all caught, because they dump a couple thousand in there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So,
well, we look forward to keeping up with all of your adventures, and seeing even what's to come for ice season, because that'll be awesome. We're hoping to get out and have a trip with you, so that'll be a whole lot of fun.
yeah, absolutely, anytime.
Yeah, but
I mean, especially if Erie freezes, that's a bucket trip.
Heck yeah.
You want a 30-incher, catch them through the ice, because your eyes will be as big as saucers.
Yeah. We'll keep an eye on that ice condition.
That's absolutely true.
We have many different methods to get you out there. So, we go out of, Port Clinton, Camp Perry at times, McGee's Marsh. That's where we went this year. So, it's really, and the DNR really, we got checked this year, and she was really nice. And again, you follow the rules, you got no problems.
Awesome.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. Yeah, that is true, I guess. So, I mean, again, thanks for being here. Oh, no.
Thanks for having me.
I thought my screen froze. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I said, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, good. Awesome. And then to the people at home, thank you guys as well for being here.
Yeah.
Always a great episode, and looking forward to next week as well. So thanks again for being here on this episode of Hook, Line, and Striker.
Night, everybody.